A university defines the herbarium as a critical resource for biodiversity, ecological, and evolutionary research studies. It is a primary data source of dried and labeled plant specimens that is arranged to allow for easy retrieval access and archival storage. A herbarium is like a library, but differs in that the information is stored in a biological form, as pressed, dried, and annotated plant specimens. But this herbarium of Jason D is an installation of contemporary art. It is also an altar, a studio, a community billboard, a garden. It is an intersection of so many kindred places. Going through the sections in this wonderfully meandering exhibition of Jason D at the Vargas Museum is like walking into a herbarium.
I'm Jason D. I am a Jesuit priest, lecturer at the Ateneo Fine Arts Department, and a practicing artist since April 2020. And as an artist, I also try to tap into art and creativity in order to deal with the pandemic myself, as a way of coping, making music. And I'm glad that the opportunity opened for me when I became part of the Radyo Katipunan online masses.
My dear brothers and sisters, today we celebrate
my own participation in the Radyo Katipunan was arranging flowers for the online liturgy and also setting up wall with prayers that we collected. They are either sent to us via online Facebook messages, text, or sent to us personally, and we prayed for them. During this pandemic, I've been dealing with my role as a priest to provide online masses and pastoral care, as well as an artist to enliven the liturgy through flower arrangements. It is a Japanese art of arranging flowers. It's famously called Ikebana. And part of my flower arrangement right now is a training on how to arrange through the formal styles of Ikebana schools, especially the Sugetsu school. And if you trace this tradition of flower arrangement, you realize that this is a kind of contemplative way of dealing with nature, looking at their beauty, their colors, their shape and line, and to harness them in arrangement so that we can see better the beauty embedded in these flowers.
Since the start of the pandemic, the first ECQ last year, we have had a daily celebration of the Holy Eucharist at Radyo Katipunan. It is much appreciated by our community. It has been a source of strength for them in these trying times. The consoling homilies of our priests make the Mass special. But another highlight which people look forward to see every day with great anticipation was the floral arrangement done by Father Jason D. It started with just twigs and wild flowers which he gathered from everywhere at the Ateneo. But Father Jason was able to put them together and infuse some deep inspirational message into them in the light of the readings for the day, and of course in the context of the pandemic. Somehow people saw that and looked forward to being regaled by the beauty that came from Father Jason's mix, and they also enjoyed deciphering the secret message, as it were, that he infused in his floral arrangement. Now his floral designs have benefited from flower donations from friends and fans. And if the liturgy, if the Mass is supposed to be the apex of our prayer and worship, Father Jason's flowers have made them even more divine and sublime.
These acrylic and industrial paint tapestries are used for the liturgical celebrations at the Radyo Katipunan online masses. The long ones, we use it for the altar wall, and the medium, we use it for the altar cover, and the small one is for the ambo. Okay? And these are the liturgical colors of the church. So we have violet for Advent and also violet for Lent. So you have green for ordinary season, yellow for and white for solemnities. No? So these are different colors of the liturgical seasons of the church. And for us to enliven the liturgy online, we use these leaf prints. No? And the process of leaf print making is that we choose leaves, we paint directly on them, and we press it on the canvas. And this is actually in collaboration with the Radyo Katipunan and Jesuit staff. No? They helped me in pressing the flowers. And the liturgical cycle of our church can also be related to the elemental cycles, no? Of fall, winter, and summer and spring. Okay? So the elements have also their own cycle of growth, no? Decay and rebirth. No? And that is very related to the idea of the Paschal mystery, which is related to our liturgy as a church.
Father Jason's exhibit, Nature is Never Spent, to me is a love story. It's a deeply personal one, but an archetypal and universal story that will resonate with many. It did to me on a soul level. The whole exhibit speaks so eloquently of the relationship between man and nature, between man and God. The story, or the exhibit, starts with the intriguing series called I Am Tree, photographs of a man acting as the trunk of different kinds of trees. The pictures, like a new love, capture the viewer's attention as they invite us to look and imagine ourselves as trees. Well-chosen writings encourage us further to reflect on the intercourse between man and the primordial tree. Next, an installation composed mainly of two large tree branches with gentle yet strong lines enables the viewer to feel that he or she is indeed a tree, or at least a part of a tree. The tree is a sanctuary, a kernel, and a strength. And in this installation, we feel, or at least I felt, that I am the tree, and that the tree is somehow in me.
At the basement of Vargas Museum, you will see works that talks about growth, optimism, and also human engagement with nature. So when you look at this installation, there are dried flowers, and the dried flowers are arranged on the wall, similar to how we dry flowers at the studio, because after the arrangement, we dry the flowers in order to use them either as botanical drawings or part of an arrangement or installation. The title of this exhibition is entitled Nature is Never Spent. It's inspired by the Jesuit poet Gerard Manley Hopkins, who talked about nature as dealt with human beings, no? And there's a particular phrase in that poem, God's Grandeur, where he said, generations have trod. So it means that generations have been dealing with nature since the awakened consciousness, no? But from the point of view of Manley Hopkins, there's always this conflict with nature, especially in relation with how work has been applied to nature. That's why he said, and all is seared with trade, bleared, smeared with toil. And my own take on that is really how human beings have made nature as a resource for its development, for the common good. Unfortunately, nature has been exploited because of this insatiable need to consume. And it's not just exploited, it's also abused, no? Misused, no? And this kind of conflict with nature is important to reflect, especially in this time of the pandemic. And my own reflection is that we have to be at one with nature. I think the context of this work is that there are also people who are also befriended nature in their own ways. So we can see in this exhibition that there are certain cultures like Japan, the Japanese culture, who have engaged with nature in a more spiritual way and artistic way, like the practice of flower arrangement to adorn the altars and the alcoves, even the tea ceremony. This is very sensitive to nature in their own cultural practices.
Love endures. As resurrection comes next in the enlivened series of documented floral arrangements Father Jason had made for various occasions. Here, flowers are mixed with leaves and twigs that depict the season of hope.
The Jesuits all over the world are celebrating this year a special year. It is the 500-year anniversary of the conversion of St. Ignatius of Loyola, our founder. In May 1521, Ignatius, as a soldier, suffered a tragic defeat in Pamplona, the famous cannonball experience of Ignatius. I hope you have heard of that. But that actually set him off to a new course, a new life. The theme of the year is seeing all things new in Christ. That seems to be Father Jason's inspiration behind his floral work. From twigs, branches, and wildflowers, he is able to produce something new, something beautiful for our masses, for our online congregation.
As an artist, I've been fascinated with plants, flowers, no? And I have some philosophical question, like when I see dried leaves. I'm just fascinated with how it wilts, curls up, and dries up. These works here are a series of photographs of dried leaves. No? I was fascinated with the processes again of nature, wilting and drying, and how leaves, when they dry, they curl up. No? And the impetus of this idea is really coming from a question that I got when I was a philosophy student at the Ateneo de Manila during my Jesuit formation. When my Jesuit mentor, Father Nahaveliane, asked me, Jason, can you cry over a dying leaf? No? It was a bit esoteric question, but it got me thinking of the question itself, of how sensitive am I to the leaves. No? And when you look at these photographs, you will see the beauty, the lines, the forms, the shape, and the color of leaves drying, and they are like sculptural. So this is an invitation to think of leaves, mortality. This series is entitled Auratic Series. No? I'm interested to capture the spirit behind the leaves that are drying and wilting. No? And these works were part of the Holy Week celebration. So starting Holy Wednesday until Easter Sunday. So these are prints on like a Juratan print, and it's on a light box to give that glow. These are works that depicts primarily the life cycle of plant, like from growth to blooming, then wilting. But this is also symbolic of Christ, the figure of Christ from his passion, death, and resurrection, as the leaves processes suggest.
Jason D., the priest, citizen, artist of the Jesuit order, proposes a way to reflect on the condition of nature in pandemic time, or on the pandemic in natural history, regarded as life force, vitality, atmosphere, or anything that is not human. Nature is not only represented or internalized, its mutation is performed in inventive procedures, chastened, but also sharpened by a seemingly lasting crisis. For indeed, the exhibition has made us realize that the insistent global pandemic has made us humans come to terms with an interspecies universe. The virality of an invisible COVID-19 has been unnerving, juxtaposed with the ubiquity of very visible distress and suffering. The feeling of uncertainty can only be heightened. In the intimate but digitally extensive spaces of home and work, the state of nature inevitably changes in the face of an everyday emergency. Intriguing is the phrase of Jason D., nature is never spent. In light of the predation of the planet and the ominous changes in the climate, it seems to be counterintuitive. It is, however, a prayer and a meditation on transfiguration, how life morphs from state to state, forsaking inevitable entropy or obsolescence. D dwells on this exfoliation as a foil to the desiccation of nature and the unremitting expenditure of its substance and spirit.
This is a photograph of me in a performance, bringing the red umbrella. This performance started in 2017 during the martial law commemoration. And this is my own way of advocating for justice and for the common good. And especially during this time when there are people who are killed because of human violence. And I hold up a red umbrella and holding up a red umbrella as a simple gesture of advocating for non-violence, no? And advocating for life. And it's red, it's an umbrella because the umbrella is used as a shield from the sun and from the rain. And I use this as a symbol of shielding from bloodshed. And this photograph was taken at Dangwa, where you have flower arrangements made by the vendors for the dead. And this particular performance is in homage to all people who perished during this pandemic, to pray for their repose in solidarity as well with their families who are mourning because of loss. But there are also other people who employ flowers as a symbol of their longing in terms of peace, their advocacies. No? And in this particular work, this is inspired by this young person in Myanmar who protested against the current military regime. No? And this girl was wearing this shirt, "Everything will be okay." Okay? And it was her attempt to say to the Myanmarese people na we'll continue to advocate for peace, for non-violence, for our people. No? And this is a kind of homage to her and people advocating for peace and justice. And when you look at elements in this work, you will find that there are synthetic flowers, no? And they are embedded on bullets. And this is tried to suggest the idea that in many revolutions, flowers have been used as a gesture of peace offering. No? So this flower is so fragile, but at the same time, it can be a potent, powerful symbol to advocate for peace. No? And when you look at these cast bottles, they are symbolic of protesters using like bombs, no, in their own armed struggle. But my own sense is coming from the protest of that girl, no, for active non-violence and using nature to convey the message of peace. I'd been doing floral letterings, and I'd been continuing on reflecting on how flowers can be used as a way to communicate ideas during the pandemic. And the word that stood out for me during the pandemic is the idea of bloom. Because of this new normal brought about by the pandemic, the challenge, how do you thrive? Not just survive, but how do you thrive in this new order or new disorder? Okay? And that's an invitation that hopefully in this pandemic, we will all thrive, we will all bloom.
In my mind, the practice of tea has conscientiously tended the gardens and altars of sympathy, enlivening the ethos of love, the politics of hope.
Nothing is wasted in nature and in man, for all come from the giver of life. Love understands love. It needs no words, maybe just light.
In the drab and darkness that has been the pandemic, his daily floral work is like fresh new paint that allows us to see colors in our lives made dull and gray by the pandemic. Father Jason's work indeed inspires us to be creative, to find new energies for hope, faith, and love, hidden in the ordinary and in the worst of situations. That is truly Ignatian.
In the Christian perspective, we are taught that when the world was created by God, we are also created along with it, and we are invited to be stewards of creation. We are not above creation, we are one in taking care of nature, and nature takes care of us as well. It's a kind of atonement in a sense that we have to go back to nature and be one with it.